وعلى آله وصحبه وبارك وسلم. نويت تعلم وتعليم المذكر والتذكير والنفع والانتفاع والإفادة والاستفادة والحث التمسك بكتاب الله وسنة رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وصحبه وبارك وسلم ودعاء إلى الهدى ودلالة على الخير ابتغاء وجه الله ومرضاته وقرب ثوابه سبحانه وتعالى مع لطف وعافية برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم إنا نسألك علما للعلم وسوفي هني بغني. اللهم إنا نسألك علما للعلم وسوفي هني بغني. اللهم إنا نسألك علما للعلم وسوفي هني بغني. صلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم ارزقنا ربي فهم النبيين وحفظ المرسلين والهم الملائكة المقربين في عافية يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم افتح علينا فتوح العارفين وفقهنا في الدين وعلم التأويل واهدنا إلى سواء السبيل. اللهم انفعنا وارفعنا وعرفنا بالعلم النافع وانفعنا به أنفسنا وأهلنا وأوطاننا وديارنا وجميع المسلمين يا رب العالمين. الفاتحة. Alhamdulillah, we are in the second maqsad and the second aims and objectives of sacred learning. Right, so the first one we finished, right, and Habib went through 16 ways, right, in which you can ingrain and in which you can engrave in their hearts and plant in their hearts the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the greatness of the prophets alayhimus salam, and also the greatness of the book of Allah, the Quran and the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and all of these things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned in exaltation. Right, so for us to really is that you can't emphasize this even more, right, because it's the first objective of knowledge. So any form of knowledge, if it does not place in your heart the reverence for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and all that Allah has made revered, right, to us, then you have lost the first point of knowledge. That's the whole point of knowledge, for us to understand, right, the one who teaches us and the one who has given us knowledge. That's the first point. Right? Then we go into the second part, which is for most education systems, they go into this directly, right? Especially Singapore education, but they go into what is being taught. Right, they go straight into the subject matter. How do we make it interesting? How do we make it fun? How do we make it appealing to our students? And by the first part, that was about the aggrandization of God subhanahu wa ta'ala himself, that part is completely, almost completely, I don't know if it's completely, but almost completely neglected, right, in our education. Right, so even as far to say as even in the madrasah system, right, there is also a lacking, right, of the organization of God in them learning all the sciences. Yesterday I was speaking to my cousin, and she's all the way madrasah, so I'm not speaking like just anyhow, because I mix a lot with them. When I was in Syria, I lived with the madrasah girls who were from madrasah system, and they went to Syria to study their Sharia. And in Yemen also I mixed with them, right, and I always talk to them about their situation and everything, like, and it is a situation whereby it is not being aggrandized and not being exalted and not being emphasized about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in that system. So I was talking to her, and she was saying that they used to learn tawheed, aqidah, like in the madrasa, but she said she herself at that age thought it was the most boring subject in the world. Like, she actually thought it was really the most boring thing, aqidah. And then, but now she's like, actually, it's the most interesting thing, right, to speak about God subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right, but for somehow or other, it was just so dull, right? And when I was in Syria also, when I was speaking to them, and I remember there was one time whereby it was the 10 days of Ashara, of the 10 days of Dhul Hijjah, the 10 days of Dhul Hijjah, and these 10 days, can you all please play in the room? Can all of you play in the room? All of you, please play in the room. Please play in the room. Okay. So, thank you. So, what was I saying, Muhammad? So I remember there was once I was in Syria, and I was the only one who was from a government school background. And not to say the government school just does anything about God, right? But it's like later on, when you find out in your life, and then you appreciate it more and more. When you learn it by yourself, and it's not enforced onto you. You have to learn all these things. Thank you very much. Right. So it was the 10 days of Dhul Hijjah. Right, and I don't know why it was, but the 10 days of Dhul Hijjah, like when you learn the religion, right, these 10 days are the most sacred days in the Islamic calendar. They are the most sacred days, even more sacred than Ramadan, even more sacred than the last 10 days of Ramadan. Right, it's the most sacred days. Allah swears by these 10 days in Surah Fajr. Right, so it's really grand, and everything you do in these 10 days is multiplied 10,000 times. You know, your hasanat, and every evil you do is also multiplied. So you were in the 10 days of Dhul Hijjah, right? But okay, one thing, you know, the fasting thing, I don't know what it is, right, about this not fasting on these 10 days, right? Because, you know, we should be fasting, right, on these 10 days, especially, you know, they were Talibul Ilm, right? They were studying the Sharia, but they were not fasting, right, on these 10 days. But it's something that is, I'm not blaming them, right? But it's something in the education. Like that you learn about these 10 days. I'm sure you learn about these 10 days of Dhul Hijjah, but they were not fasting. And then they had no school, right, because it's the 10 days of Dhul Hijjah. So it was you know, a holiday, right? So they were actually spending their time playing cards, right, the whole every day. And then to the point, I think because I'm older also lah, they were all like in their teenage, because they just finished madrasah, they came to Syria to study. So they're like 18, 19 year olds, 20 year olds. Right. So when I was at that time, I was like what, 20, 24, not so much older, but still older. Right, so eventually I was like, why these people every day playing cards? Because they brought the Monopoly deal, so they were like addicted to it lah, in a way. Like it is an addiction, these card games. So eventually I just tegur lah, because I want to tegur, because it is the 10 days of Dhul Hijjah. Like, why are you wasting these 10 days? In Tarim, right, the way they really implant this, the 10 days of Dhul Hijjah, they do one khatam of the Quran. Right, so you know, in 10 days, right? But not even 10 days, every 3 days, khatam. Right, so like for us, Ramadan khatam. You know, like they all like 10 days of Dhul Hijjah, khatam. Like they do a khatam of the Quran in 10 days of Dhul Hijjah. So you're not even, you know, there's no wasting of time, but it's an organization of the 10 days of Dhul Hijjah. Right, so when I went up to them and I sat with them and I watched them playing the cards, and I just said, I want to say something. Let me just say something. You know, I can't stand this, not stand this, but I can't keep quiet lah. I have to say something. Right, so I just told them that you all know, and I'm sure you all know, you've learned this before, all of you are from madrasah background, you all know about the 10 days of Dhul Hijjah. Right, why is it that every day you've been playing cards? Monopoly deal. Right, I know, I won't say it's haram, but it's not the best time to do this. It's not the best time. And you're all adults. You should know more, better than doing this. Right, and they were, like one of them was saying, oh, but it's, you know, it works our mind. Monopoly deal, right? It makes you smarter. And yeah, the Quran does that more. I mean, I shook back lah, of course lah, but you know, it was just a discussion lah. But I was just saying that you all, you know, where's your fasting? Right, all of you, most of them were praying. Like, where's your fasting? Where's your exaltation of the 10 days? You know, the implantation of this exaltation of the religion of Allah Subhanahu Wa Taala. So I was talking to my cousin about it, and she was saying that there is, and she does admit lah, there is a very strong lack, right, within the teaching of the religion, like the aggrandization of the religion itself. Right, so you know, it's not to blame lah or anybody. I'm not like bad mouthing or whatever, but it's just for us to think, like, why is our education like not focused on this? Right, the first thing that Habib said, first thing, and I see this a lot in Tarim. The first thing I learned in Tarim was never put a miswak on the floor. That's the first thing I actually learned when I entered there. Not like I learned, you know, fi'il, maf'ul, nahu or whatever. Nothing of that sort. The first thing I learned from my teacher in the halaqah of the Quran is not the surah, right, but the miswak is not on the floor. Right, and she taught me that by just picking it up and putting it on my lap. She didn't even say anything. She just, and then she continued. And then every time anybody miswak on the floor, she just pick it up. So she won't even say, right, but she would just do it. Right, so that was the first thing, you know, I learned from them, you know, and the first thing, so it's macam there's this aggrandization, right, that is in their blood, right, so you that's why when my husband was in Tarim, I'm going to the topic, but when we were in Tarim, my husband met a person, a student who was studying in Darul Mustafa, right, but he had completed 6 years in Al-Azhar, like in Mesir Al-Azhar. So my husband was like, "What are you doing in Darul Mustafa? Like, you already finished 6 years in Al-Azhar. Why are you here? Right? Because, you know, compared to what you have done, this is like really, you know, simple." Right? And then this person said, and he's from Madrasah background. He's from Singapore lah. He's a Singaporean, Malaysian, one of that lah. But he's from Madrasah background, and he went to do his studies in the Al-Azhar, and he finished 6 years into his masters in Al-Azhar, and then he came to Tarim, and he spent a year in Tarim. Right? And then my husband asked him, why are you doing here? And then he said that, well, in Al-Azhar, I got all the knowledge, right? But I did not get the adab. Right? I came here for the adab, for the sunnah. Right? And it is true. In Habib, he really focuses on all of these things. You have to, that's why he rejected chairs and tables, sit on the floor. You have to have adab with the Quran. You have to have your wudu in class. In fact, all of our classes face the Qibla. All of the classes in Darul Zahra face the Qibla. Right? So, like subhanallah, the whole school is facing the Qibla. So when you learn, everybody is facing the Qibla. You all are now like, where's the Qibla? But Hababa Mariam did say that, not Hababa Mariam, the other teachers said that in halaqah is okay. Right? But Hababa Mariam, she would always back the Qibla and make all of us sit straight row in front of her, right, facing the Qibla. She would do that. Hababa Mariam would do that because she has a very strong hold on the facing the Qibla thing. Right? So in all of her classes, all of us face the Qibla. Right? So I don't know whether we want to enforce that, implement that, because it would be maybe the morning session, in the first session when they read all their aurat, maybe you could do that facing the Qibla. The teacher will back the Qibla, right? But everybody else faces the Qibla. It's from a story whereby there were two students, right, and they were of the same caliber, same ability. Right, but one of them seemed to memorize much faster than the other one. So the teacher asked, them like asked the one who memorized much faster, like, what is your secret? Like, what do you do every day that you can memorize so fast? Then he said, I don't really do much, except that whenever I want to memorize, I make sure that I face the Qibla. And all of his lessons, his studies, everything, he will face the Qibla. Right, so like for me in Tarim also, at home, all that, whenever I'm studying or writing notes or whatever, any subject, doesn't matter how to be Quran, any subject, I make sure I'm facing the Qibla. Right? Because Hababa Mariam said that is when your mind will open. And Allah will give you the barakah of Qibla. Right? So, and people in Tarim, subhanallah, even eating, they face the Qibla. So even eating, they are like, where's the Qibla? And they face the Qibla while they're eating to make sure the food has barakah in the food. Right? So sleeping, eating, studying, everything, they are facing the Qibla. Right? And it's sunnah for you to take wudu facing the Qibla. But we all like, where's my tap? It's difficult for us to face the Qibla in our wudu. Right? But I mean, Allahu Alam. Right? If you can renovate and make the tap face the Qibla somehow. Allahu Alam. Right? Yes. Because the one who's facing the Qibla will have openings in their mind. So it's better the student. Right? The teacher is delivering, and the student will be side by side one okay lah. Ahsan, if it's one-on-one lah, side by side. But if it's an entire group of people, then of course the teacher is the one who backs. It's like the imam. The imam, everyone is if it's in the Qibla, and the imam turns when he wants to address the people. Right? When he wants the khatib also. The khatib in the Salat Jum'ah, he will also back the Qibla, and everybody is towards the Qibla. It's similar to that in that sense. Alright. Okay. So so implement all these 16. We learn all these 16. Make sure you're implementing them, right, with your children. I already subhanahu wa ta'ala is it in your tongue. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah Jalla Jalala. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Right. All of this has to come off of your tongue very naturally. Right, as you say this. And then Quranul Azim, Quranul Kareem. Right, the Quran, that we love, the Quran hada. Right, so just try to make it, the blessed month of Ramadan. Right, if you can try to say all these things. Okay, the next maqsad, right, maqsad al-thani. Okay, can you all stay in the room? Can you all stay in the room? Right, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. وسائل المقصد الثاني. أما الوسائل المقصد الثاني وهو إيصال المعلومات إلى الأذهان وتفقيههم في الدين فهي. Right, so the second purpose of seeking sacred knowledge. Right, so now only we enter into the subject matter. Right, this is the second purpose. So the first purpose is all about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and really cannot emphasize it even more. Right, that is why people can study the religion their entire lives and still leave the religion. Right, because the first maqsad was not emphasized. Right, is the heaviest, is the most important thing. Right, don't jump to the second one without the first one being emphasized. Right, the second one, right, it is to the ways and means by which you accomplish or you establish the second aims and objectives of seeking secret knowledge, which is, right, that you deliver the information to their minds, right, to their brains, to their minds, and let them understand, right, or explain to them, right, about this religion. Right, that's the second thing. So the second objective is all about the ma'lumat, like all about the information, the knowledge. How do you deliver? It's about delivery. It is about teaching. How do you teach? So just the second part is only about teaching. The first part is all about the point, and later on you will see what else is about. There are four. There are four objectives. Memorize them. It's not hard, this book, to memorize. Memorize all four. Right. So the number two. Right. So the first thing is, how do you deliver? First of all, الأول على المدرس والمتكلم أن يلقي درسه وكلمته بصوت المرتفع يسهل على كل الحاضرين سماعة. Right, so it is on the teacher, right, or on whoever is speaking, to raise their voice. Right, so don't be that teacher who nobody can hear what she's saying. Right, that is the worst. That is the first thing about teaching. Right, I don't know if you hear, if you're teachers, never speak softly. It's the worst thing. But I've met teachers who are like that. Right, they don't raise their voice. You must raise your voice, and there has to be intonation. Right, there has to be hand gestures. There has to be eye contact. You have to look around. It's all the skills of teaching. You can't just teach monotonously, and that is when you lose your students. Right, but when you teach, with gestures, with voice, with intonation, that is when they pay attention. Right, and that is when they feel that you are delivering from your heart to their heart. Right, the information. Right. So that's the first one. Right. So it's simple, like all know all about this first rule. And we all as students, we know a teacher who is good and a teacher who is not good. Right. Teachers who are not good in our past, in our life in school, they are the ones who never really express. Right. So it can be any subject. As long as you are expressive, you are a good teacher. Right. An expressive, which is why there is a hadith that Rasulullah SAW said that a more fearful thing I have over my ummah than the Dajjal. That means what he's more fearful over. Right? Then the Dajjal is the eloquent speaker who calls to dalal, who calls to what is dalal? Who calls to the error. Who calls to error. Right? Because it is the nature of human beings, right, to be charmed, right, by the eloquent speaker. Right? So those who are on the right path, they need to learn how to be eloquent. They need to learn how to speak. They need to learn how to catch people's hearts. Right? Because that is from a hadith. Right? That he is more afraid of that speaker. Right? The speaker who is eloquent but he calls to error. Right? Than the Dajjal himself. That is more dangerous than the Dajjal. Then we are like compared to the Dajjal. So a preacher who preaches but all wrong. Right? But because he's so eloquent and so charismatic, and so people are pulled in. And we know that about as students, kan? So it is on those who are right to also have that way of teaching, so they're not pulled towards those who are wrong. And I once asked Habib Kadim about the question about what about speakers who, they do call to good, right? But they have some akidah in there, right? That is not of Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah. Right? What about these speakers? Because they do call to good. They do call to family, peace, and call to marriage, to have a peaceful marriage between your husband and wife. But we know that they are on Aqidah, right? Their belief, there is something that is not mainstream, right? It's not Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah. What does he say about them lah? Right? Should we listen to them? Right? And he said, I always remember his answer. And he said, these people, right? They are like the one who serves honey with poison. Right? So you enjoy the honey. Right, without you knowing it, there's a bit of poison being served. Right, and he said that there are people who are doing the same, who are serving pure honey. Look for them. Right, so why do you have to turn to those people? Right, there are many people who are serving pure honey. Look for these people. Right, they will not put in poison into their speech. Right, you can't argue lah. Right, there are many people who are out there who are Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah and on the right path, and they are very eloquent speakers. Right, so why are we turning to those who are who put things in their speech lah? right? So on teachers and parents also, how you teach need to be expressive, right? Don't be shy. Like you need to go all out, right, in how you teach them. The second one, وأن يتأنى في الإلقاء تماما بحيث يسهل الاستيعابه. وفي الحديث أنه صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم كان يتكلم كلمة لو أراد السامع أن يعود كلماته لقدر على ذلك. Right, so it is on the speaker, right, to speak everything, right, completely and wholly. It means fully, right, whereby you speak. Don't rush through your words. Don't mumble. Right, don't swallow your letters, which I do. I know I do. I swallow my letters. Right, so don't try not to do that. I try to pronounce everything clearly. And it was described about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he is the best of orators, right, the best of speakers. They went out, is it? Yeah, I think someone went out. Or went to the store. Okay. Alright. So for you to يتأنى في الإلقاء تماما. Right, so for you to be able to speak clearly, right, and fully, right, make your words full, right, so that the person who is listening to you, it is easier on them to understand you. And look at your crowd. So if you're speaking to commoners, and I've seen Habib do this when he speaks to commoners for during khutbah Jum'ah, right, he uses the easiest words. He does not use big bombastic words for khutbah, right, because you're talking to the like they are the commoners. Like you have the farmer, you have the Bedouin, you have all people from around the town of Tarim. Like they come for Jum'ah, so you don't want to give them a khutbah Jum'ah whereby all your words are so bombastic, like so big your words. Like have simple words for these people and explain to them simply. Right? And if your audience are maybe the ulama, maybe you can go into something that is deeper. Right? But don't be the one who is a fitna onto those who are listening. I don't mean because of you they turn away. Because of you are so boring, or you're so complicated, or you go into deep things. That these are people who are just learning the religion. Kan? Don't talk into all this khilaf between the mazhabs and everything. Like Habib Ali Mashhur, he's the mufti of Tarim. He would never, in his lessons for the public, he would never mention what the other mazhabs say. He knows, of course he knows, but he only gives one opinion. Every question he gives one opinion. And there is the majority opinion of the Shafi'i madhab. And he won't even say the other opinions. He won't say any of that. He will just give them one answer. And Habib Omar, his morning lesson, which is fiqh, very heavy fiqh, he goes into deep fiqh where he talks about all the different opinions into English or Malay. It's left in Arabic. So a lot of the students were complaining to me because I was in charge one of the years. And they were saying, why is the morning lesson, everybody is listening and we're not like blur down here, I don't know what's going on. And they were saying, why don't you translate the morning lesson? And then I said to them, one thing, it's very complicated for me to translate because I'm trying to understand myself. Like, it's very complicated. Like, and it will be a fitna for you to listen in because you're not even learning Arabic yet. Right? So don't listen to these things yet. It will confuse you. Right? Because there are other mazhabs and whatsoever. Right? So we don't even bother translating for them. Right? Because it would be a problem, right, for them to see all kinds of opinions. Right? So it is on the speaker to understand his crowd, right, and also to bring it down to their level. Right? So for children, of course, try not to explain too complicated things. So for Sirah, I try my best because Sirah is very complicated. Right? So I try my best to make it as simple as possible, get the point. Okay, so Najashi cried because the Quran was read. Even that one complicated. Is he sad? And trying to drive the point, you can cry when you're not sad. They're also difficult to drive the point through because they only know to cry when they're sad. They have not met crying out of happiness, out of shukr, right? So they have not reached that stage, in their crying. Now it's all like nafsu crying, Right? So, but we're trying try to bring things down to their level. And it was said in the hadith that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself, he used whenever he would speak, he would say word for word. Right? Every word is given its right, every word is pronounced as it is. So if somebody wanted to repeat exactly what he said, they could. And that was the way of Rasulullah SAW. And if something was important, he would say it 3 times. So that's even sunnah of speech. The sunnah of speech is to always face the person, face the people that you're speaking. Right? Mention everything clearly. Don't be long-winded. Right? Try to get to the points, right? Or even to number your points. Right? That helps people in memorization. So you number. Today I'm going to speak about 3 things. Right? And then you put the 3 things on the board. Right? So that they can memorize what is being spoken about. Right? These are all the sunnahs of Rasulullah SAW. That's the way he used to teach. And inshallah in the book Muhammad the Perfect Teacher, inshallah in the book we will go through these methods, right, whereby he would deliver the contents. Right. Right. Number 3.